The cleaner's daughter stood up at the altar, leading the billionaire boss to call off the wedding immediately. In a room filled with high society guests, the grand wedding of billionaire Charles Lancaster and his elegant bride Isabella was about to take place. The air was thick with excitement, but as the bride took her place at the altar, something unexpected happened. A voice, loud, defiant, interrupted the ceremony, a voice belonging to someone no one could have predicted. The daughter of the family's cleaner, standing in the back, made her presence known. What she revealed in that moment would not only cancel the wedding, but expose deep-seated racism that had been hiding in plain sight. The setting was nothing short of extravagant, a luxurious old-world chapel filled with chandeliers, marble, floors, and rows of polished wooden benches. The air smelled of fresh flowers, and guests dressed in their finest suits and gowns whispered in anticipation as the ceremony began. Among them was Charles Lancaster, a respected billionaire who had amassed his wealth through astute business deals and strategic moves. His bride, Isabella, was the picture of beauty, poised and adored by all. But no one noticed the quiet presence of Leah, the cleaner's daughter, who had been in the background all her life. She wasn't even invited to the wedding. Still, she had accompanied her mother, quietly working behind the scenes to ensure the venue was pristine for the guests. Leah had always been aware of her place in the world, beneath the likes of Charles and Isabella, who lived in a different universe of privilege. Leah had grown up with a burning desire to rise above her circumstances. Still, she had also witnessed the subtle cruelty that often went unchallenged in these high society spaces. Her mother, a kind but reserved woman, had served the Lancasters for years. But it wasn't just the endless cleaning, the back-breaking work, or the constant feeling of being invisible that weighed on Leah's heart. It was the casual racism. The way Charles would always talk down to her mother, the way Isabella would avoid making eye contact, the way they would dismiss people like them as though they didn't even exist. Today, however, something had changed. As Leah looked around, she realized that this was her moment, not just to be a silent observer, but to be heard. And with a deep breath, she stepped forward. As Leah's voice cut through the air, the room fell silent. Everyone turned to look at her, and she could feel their judgment, their shock, their disbelief. How dare this outsider speak? Who did she think she was, interrupting the grandest wedding of the year? But Leah was no longer intimidated by their stares. She stood tall, her heart pounding in her chest, but her mind was clear. With a shaky voice at first, she revealed a truth she had kept inside for years. She spoke of the times her mother had been humiliated, the times she had overheard racist remarks disguised as casual comments. She told the story of how her mother had been paid far less than others for doing the same work, how they had been expected to be grateful for the scraps they were given. She described the countless moments when she was made to feel less than human, not worthy of being seen as equals. But what made this moment so powerful was the message Leah delivered. She had had enough. She was no longer willing to remain in the shadows. As she recounted the stories of injustice, the tension in the room thickened. Whispers spread among the guests, and the once joyful atmosphere quickly turned into one of discomfort. Charles, standing at the altar, was visibly flustered. His bride, Isabella, looked at him, her face pale, not knowing how to react. Leah wasn't just exposing the racism she had witnessed firsthand. She was also exposing the racism she had seen firsthand. She was calling out the very system that had kept her family in their place. She knew the crowd would be outraged. She knew that Charles wouldn't take kindly to someone daring to question his carefully curated world. But what Leah didn't expect was the reaction that followed. As Leah's words settled in, Charles Lancaster's face twisted in anger. His fists clenched, and his gaze turned cold. He had worked his entire life to build this empire, this world where people like him had control, a world where those like Leah and her mother were meant to stay silent and obedient. How dare she challenge him, challenge everything he had built? His lips parted, ready to lash out, but before he could speak, Isabella, his bride, did the unthinkable. Without a word, she stepped back from the altar, her eyes filling with tears. She looked at Leah, then at Charles, then at the crowd of guests who had all been complicit in this quiet injustice. "This isn't the man I thought I was marrying," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "I can't go through with this." The room froze. The wedding that had seemed so inevitable just moments ago was now hanging in the balance. Charles stared at Isabella, incredulous. How could she do this to him? But Isabella, finally seeing the truth in Leah's words, didn't flinch. She turned to leave the altar, walking away from a future that had been built on the suffering of others. The guests were stunned. They didn't know whether to clap or stay silent. Leah's heart raced, but in that moment, she felt an unexpected sense of peace. She had taken a stand, and the world was listening. The aftermath of that day was chaotic. The wedding was called off, and the Lancaster family was left to deal with the fallout. Charles tried to salvage his reputation, but the damage had been done. The press covered the story for weeks, and Leah's name was mentioned more times than she could have imagined. But what mattered more than any headline was the change that followed. Isabella, although heartbroken, realized that her life had been a bubble of privilege, detached from the struggles of others. She reached out to Leah, offering her an apology, and for the first time the two women saw each other as equals. Leah's courage had not only ended the wedding, but had ignited a conversation about racism in a world where it had been brushed under the rug for far too long. Charles Lancaster, once a figure of untouchable wealth and power, became a symbol of accountability, facing backlash from his employees, business partners, and even his own family. He realized, too late, that no amount of wealth or status could shield him from the truth that had been revealed. The story of Leah, the cleaner's daughter, became a beacon of hope for many. It reminded people that standing up against injustice, no matter how small or loud your voice may seem, can change the world. And in that decisive moment, as the wedding was called off, it was clear that sometimes the most unexpected people are the ones who have the strength to make history.